I got a noise complaint last week for cleaning at 9 p.m, which I thought was unreasonable, until I found out that in Switzerland, flushing your toilet after 10 p.m. can get you fined or even evicted. At which point I realized I actually have it pretty good, and maybe I should look into what other countries consider illegal before I complain about anything ever again. Because it turns out, every country on earth has at least one law that reads like it was written by someone who had a very specific bad experience and way too much power. The deeper you dig, the worse it gets. Let's start with Switzerland, because they're clearly overachieving. In 2008, the Swiss government passed a 182-page animal protection law. Buried in there, between rules about how to humanely catch a fish and what temperature your cat's room should be, is a clause that makes it illegal to own a single guinea pig. Not because guinea pigs are dangerous, because guinea pigs get lonely. The Swiss government looked at a guinea pig sitting alone in a cage and said, "This is a welfare issue," and then wrote it into federal law, which is genuinely one of the most thoughtful things a government has ever done, and also completely crazy. The problem is that guinea pigs don't die at the same time, so one goes and you're suddenly a criminal. Your pet just died and the state is looking at you like, what are you gonna do about it? So naturally, a woman near Zurich started a guinea pig rental service where you can rent a temporary companion for your grieving guinea pig until you figure out your next move. She has about 80 guinea pigs. That's not a hobby, that's an empire. The same law applies to goldfish and parrots, by the way. So in Switzerland, even your fish has a legally protected social life. Meanwhile, most Reddit users sit alone most nights, and not a single politician has raised the issue. In 1992, Singapore opened a brand new multi-billion-dollar subway system. Within months, people were sticking chewing gum on train doors, jamming the sensors and causing delays across the entire network. The cleanup was costing millions. Most countries would put up a sign, maybe a fine, but Singapore looked at the situation and said, "No, we're done. The whole thing is getting banned. You cannot sell it, you cannot import it or distribute it. If you spit it on the ground, you're looking at a fine up to $1,000 for gum." The substance itself was essentially criminalized because some people couldn't behave on public transport. The only exception is therapeutic gum, nicotine gum, dental gum, and you need an actual prescription from a doctor to get it. Prescription for gum. There are people in Singapore who have to schedule a medical appointment to chew, and a pharmacist has to log your purchase like it's a controlled substance. Somewhere in Singapore right now, a man is filling out paperwork for a piece of Nicorette, and he is dead serious about it. To be fair, Singapore is also famously one of the cleanest cities in the world, so strategy worked. The cost was just the ability to blow a bubble. 2008, the mayor of a small French town, which name I can't pronounce, passed a law that made it illegal to die within the town limits unless you already owned a cemetery plot. The exact wording threatened severe punishment for offenders, which is a bold statement to take against something that is by definition not a choice. The reason was the local cemetery was full and the mayor couldn't get permission to expand it. So rather than dealing with bureaucracy, he just made death against the law. This is the government's equivalent of putting tape over your check engine light and calling it fixed. He wasn't even the first. A town that I also can't pronounce did the same thing in 2000. And another one, which I also can't pronounce. Multiple French mayors have independently arrived at the same solution. If you can't accommodate death, simply forbid it. In 2008, which was apparently a banner year for strange laws worldwide, Japan introduced the Metabo Law, which requires citizens between 40 and 74 to have their waist measured during annual checkups. If your waist exceeds 85 centimeters for men or 90 for women, you don't get fined personally, but your employer gets hit with a higher national healthcare contribution. So your company has a direct financial incentive to keep you thin, which means somewhere in Tokyo, a middle manager is eyeing his coworker's lunch, thinking that's coming out of your budget. The annual physical isn't just health check anymore, it's a performance review for your midsection. The fact that the limit for women is actually 5 centimeters more generous than that for men is the part nobody talks about. Japan looked at the data and said, men, you get 85 and that's it. That's what you get. Absolute zero sympathy. In England and Wales, under the Salmon Act in 1986, it is illegal to handle a salmon under suspicious circumstances. That is the actual legal phrasing. The law was written to combat illegal fishing and poaching, but the wording is so beautifully vague that it raises more questions than it answers. What makes a salmon handling situation suspicious? Is it about where you're holding it, how you're looking at it, the expression of your face while holding it? If I buy a salmon from a supermarket and walk home at 2 a.m. looking tired, is that suspicious? What if I'm running? What if I'm running with 2 salmons? At what point does salmon to suspicious ratio become legal concern? The UK also has a law from 1313 making it illegal to wear armor in parliament, which means someone absolutely showed up to a government session in full chainmail, and it was disruptive enough that they codified a response. That's not just law, that's a story I need to hear. The thing with ridiculous laws is that every single one of them exists because someone, somewhere, did the thing. Nobody writes a law banning armor in parliament unless a knight walked in and caused a scene. Nobody bans chewing gum nationally unless gum genuinely shuts down a subway. Nobody makes it illegal to own one guinea pig Gunless? Actually, I think Switzerland just really loves guinea pigs and I respect that. Every weird law is a scar from a very specific moment in history where someone in charge said, we need to make sure this never happens again, and then wrote it down, and then forgot why, and now we're all just living with it. Anyway, if you need me, I'll be handling my salmon responsibly. See you in the next one.